Now for Colts Central Radio, here's Tyler Brook and Nate Dunleavy.
What's going on, everyone? My name is Tyler Brook. Welcome to Colt Central Radio. With me today is Nate Dunleavy. What's going on, Nate?
Hey, how you doing tonight, Tyler? Good to talk to you.
Doing good. All right, why don't you go ahead and bring up the first point of discussion we're going to talk about today before we have our guests?
Yeah, sure. The Colts finally came to an agreement with Bjorn Werner, the first-round draft pick. It seems like there was a little bit of a holdup on the offset language that would guarantee some extra money into the fourth year of his deal. So the Colts do now have everyone assigned, I believe, and ready for camp. No big worries about holdups. Tyler, can you explain a little bit more about the offset language and exactly what the hang-up was with getting that deal done?
Yeah, sure. With the new CBA agreement, a lot of agents and stuff have found a loophole. Offset language basically comes into play when a player has released with time remaining on his contract. Since most standard contracts are about 4 years, the issue would be if you released a player a year early and he signs somewhere else, if he gets the money you agreed to pay him plus the deal with his new team, or if the money from the new team is taken away from the total the original team owns him. So basically with offset language, you can actually subtract the amount you owe him from the new deal with the team. So basically this is usually a win for the team that originally signed him. And for some reason, this has been a big deal with recent draft picks. I mean, a lot of people were worried about Werner getting signed, but let's remember that RG3 and Andrew Luck had the same problem as well, and a lot of these first-round draft picks are now getting signed.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, until a guy misses actual camp time, there's never any reason to do any hand-wringing about these first-round deals. They're all pretty well slotted at this point, and these minor sort of squabbles between agents and clubs really just serve for the agents to help differentiate themselves from one another so that they can make a case to next year's draft picks that they can get the best possible deal for their clients. And Werner is going to be in camp on time, and Colts fans will be looking forward to hearing big things from him. Speaking of the camp roster, we had another piece of big news this week. The Colts had a couple guys open up on PUP, Tyler.
Yeah, that's right. Ahmad Bradshaw was originally put on the preseason PUP list, which I'm assuming is due to his foot. And then we also had John Boyett placed on the NFI list. Why don't you go ahead and explain a bit about those, Nate?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, the difference between the NFI and the PUP list is negligible. NFI list designates that a player got hurt in some other way than during a game, an NFL game, or practice. So if he was, for instance, a college player and he was hurt, this would be like Josh Chapman last year, was put on the non-football injury list. Even though he got hurt playing football, it wasn't playing NFL football, so therefore he qualified for that particular list. The PUP list is physically unable to perform, and this is for NFL players that have gotten hurt either in practice or in games, like Ahmad Bradshaw. I don't know if it's really an upset at all that he was put on the PUP list. What this allows teams to do is hold open a roster spot with him in mind. He won't practice in preseason until he's medically cleared. He can be cleared at any time and immediately join practice. So if Bradshaw were to clear today, then he would be eligible to practice on Sunday, just like people would be expecting. So really at any time he could be cleared. But you put a guy on this list as a precaution, just to make sure, if anything else were to happen, you could actually save his spot. What this would mean, if he were to last all preseason without practicing at all, he could then be put on the PUP list for the regular season, in which case the team would have 6 weeks in which he would be ineligible. Then he would have a couple of weeks in which they would get to see if he was going to be healthy or not before they would have to make a definitive decision to put him on IR. Once a player practices in the preseason, they are not eligible for PUP. So if Bradshaw were to come out in his first practice and sort of re-injure that foot, then the Colts would have to make a decision to either keep him active or put him on IR and possibly lose him for the season. So it only makes sense to put a guy on PUP or NFI. It gives you options. It gives you flexibility with the roster. Bradshaw had tweeted out just before the Colts had made the roster announcement that he was going to be ready to go for the regular season. He sounded upbeat. So I think there's every reason to think that he's still going to be ready. If he still hasn't seen the practice field come 2 or 3 weeks from now, then I think we'll have a little bit more of a story. But for right now, his presence on the PUP list is not barely a ripple in the large scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all knew this coming in, that he had a foot issue. He recently had a surgery to adjust the screws in his foot so they'd take less pressure off. We talked to Will about that a few weeks ago. Yeah, ultimately, this is just a precaution, and it seems like a pretty good move for now until Ahmad Bradshaw feels like he's ready to play on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you hear about the latest roster moves the Colts made this afternoon, Tyler?
Yes, I am. Unfortunately, I know about Wesley Saunders being released. But for some reason, I'm very happy about Daniel Adongo being signed just because I'm a former rugby player. And anytime a rugby player gets a shot in the NFL, I just get happy.
Does it give you hope for yourself? Are you pondering another career in football?
I am so out of shape from a few years off rugby. I don't think that's ever going to become a possibility. I'm just being honest with myself.
Rugby's one of those sports that the less you play it, the healthier you get, though. Isn't that basically the truth?
Well, yeah, but then there's a difference between being healthy and getting fat.
Don't I know it? So let's first talk about Saunders. Chuck Pagano had some interesting quotes this morning that made it sound like the team was going to stick by some of the troubled players. And that process of sticking by Saunders lasted about 3 hours. And now he's found himself back out on the street. Surprised at all that the team let him go after he'd been suspended 8 games for performance-enhancing drugs?
I wasn't surprised about it, but it did come off a little off just because of the comments hours before with Chuck Pagano saying he was going to stick by the guys. I think, in my opinion, ultimately, it wasn't probably Pagano's decision, but more of the front office deciding to let him go in terms of his image he reflected on the Colts.
Yeah, I don't even know if image even comes into it as much as just, at this point, they're looking to fill their roster. You know what I mean? They're looking to have guys that can contribute. And, you have to think about Saunders and realize that if you keep him around, you're not going to have him for 8 games. Whereas if you cut him, he'll probably still be on the street, available. They could always go back and get him later on in the season once he became eligible. It's really one of those situations where there's just no downside in letting him go. I don't necessarily know if the issue of image comes into it as much as just the issue of availability. I mean, if you knew a guy was going to be hurt for the first 8 weeks, you'd certainly expect him to get walking papers, let alone with a suspension.
I think what we're seeing is this is going to open a door wide open for the Mr. Relevant pick this year, Justice Cunningham. His scouting reports described him as essentially a third offensive tackle. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. He can play a different role than Dwayne Allen and Kobe Fleener, come in on those goal line situations, maybe even play fullback. And then we even heard at rookie minicamp he was making some plays and actually being able to catch some balls. But then again, we do know that he's playing against air.
Now, and you know that while the fans are only just hearing about these suspensions, the team is aware because there's a whole appeals process. There's a whole process that the league goes through when it comes to actually suspending players. So the team's actually aware of these things well before the rest of the public is aware of them. So the Colts very likely went into the draft and took Cunningham knowing that this issue with Saunders was going to probably come to a head. So the team's, pretty well prepared for it. And Saunders wasn't going to make or break the 2013 season.
No.
It's more just interesting to see how these things play out. And when it comes to picking up a rugby player, we're going to talk to our first guest here in a little bit, Caesar Radford. And it's interesting to see the unique ways and places that Ryan Grigson is finding players.
Yeah, I know this Adonge or whatever is not going to be the Lawrence Okoye big. From what I've seen, he's not a very big guy. But when it comes to rugby, if you played rugby, you know how to tackle and you know how to wrap up. So that might be what he's got going for him. Although there's a very small chance he makes the roster, but at least I'll have someone to root for because of rugby.
Now, can you explain to me exactly which skills from rugby do you think would translate? You mentioned tackling, you mentioned hitting. Do you see this as being a special teams kind of thing, hitting a guy in the open field? Where might those abilities come in? Or is he just looking for raw physical talent at this point, wherever you can find it?
That's what it feels like. A lot of skills don't really translate from rugby to football. It's kind of hard to explain to someone that's never played it before, but basically, almost all rugby players have to be big and fast. So that helps athletically. But in terms of fine-tuning a rugby player into an NFL athlete, it takes some work, which is why I'm one of the few guys that's pretty pessimistic about Lawrence Okoye, because I know he was a big player in rugby and then he was an Olympian, but it takes time to become a raw athlete into a football player after never playing the game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to have to be a certain amount of what's the word, athletic intelligence involved in translating the skills from one sport to another. And, that's really sort of the point of training camp, obviously, is to coach up people to get as many good athletes there as possible, to see who's got fight, and then to see who can learn. The nice thing is the Colts can take a flyer on some of these guys. At best case, a guy lands a spot on a practice squad is probably what you're looking for as the best case for the pickups today, and you're really just looking for a guy that might be a project. You might put 2 or 3 years in and get eventually maybe a good special teams player.
I totally agree with that.
I think we're all ready to go for Caesars.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onit.com. ONNIT.com/football radio.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
And we're back with our guest tonight, Caesar Rayford, who is trying out to be a linebacker for the Indianapolis Colts. The Washington native has had a lengthy career in professional football, but is looking to break into the NFL. Caesar, we're really glad to have you on tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We appreciate it. Y'all guys have me on here.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on, Caesar.
It's really exciting for Colts fans to see your development here. You're obviously a very, very large man, and you've got a lot of great potential. Tell us a little bit about your journey. You've played just about everywhere on your path to the NFL.
It's definitely been a long journey. Right after college, I did like a little senior camp with the Seahawks, and from there, didn't hear nothing from any NFL teams. So from there, I went out and did a little workout for the BC Lions. And workout went really good, and ended up signing with them and sticking with them for about 2 years up there, being on the practice roster and kind of bouncing here and there. And then after the 2009 season, decided to go take my chances to play some arena ball. So went and played for Spokane Shock in arena football, ended up winning the championship with them. And then after that season, I ended up playing in Utah for the last 3-4 years. And I've been doing pretty well out there, making a name for myself.
Where does the fire come from to keep that dream alive? A lot of guys, when they get out of college, if the NFL doesn't come calling, they do a training camp, it doesn't work out, and that's the end, and it's on to other things. But you've really worked hard and pushed yourself and been driven to keep a dream alive, really, and to get yourself, a chance to make an NFL roster. Where does that fire come from? Is it just a passion for football, or what's pushing you to keep going?
It's definitely a passion for football because I love playing the game. It's an amazing game. I love everything about it, and it's also just a driven coming from me. Just always trying to prove myself and prove to other people that I can do this. And and that's just, I always, like in college, I never was a starter, but I always felt like, I could play at the next level and I could be a good player. And I know that for myself. And so I've always pushed myself to be the best at anything I can be, you know. And growing up with parents in the military, you know, they always taught me to push myself. They pushed me. And so no matter what the circumstance or what I got going on, I've always been taught, like, if there's something you want, you know, you got to work your tail off and keep working for it and keep striving for it, you know. And, you know, that's just my goal, just to be the best as I can, as much as I can, until it's over, and until I can be like, you know what, I put everything out there.
Caesar.
But, you know, I feel like I haven't put everything out there yet, so I'm going to keep on pushing.
Caesar, what does it actually feel like to get your first real opportunity in the NFL, especially under a defensive-minded guy like Chuck Pagano?
Oh, it's a great feeling, you know, like, and I always tell people, you know, sometimes people in life get the front door, or some people get the back door. Some people like me got to climb the house and jump to the chimney, and hopefully, you know, you don't hurt yourself on the way down, you know. And so it's definitely a great feeling. It's a blessing, and you know, it's an opportunity, you know, and I have to take the best what I can with this opportunity, you know, make the best from it.
How does the process go when you first find out that an NFL team's interested in you? You know, you're playing arena ball. I mean, do you get a call from a scout? Does your agent get a call from the Colts? Like, walk us through that process for a guy that's just working hard, paying his dues, playing arena ball. How's an NFL team reach out to you, and how'd that all go down? Walk us through that experience.
From what I know is there was a couple of teams that I talked to my agent, but no one really kind of pulled the trigger. They was just kind of waiting to see how things go with me, and then I've had a couple of scouts talk to, like, my coaches over at the Utah Blaze. You know, and I mean, for the last, I think, 2 years, there have been a couple of teams, a couple of people following up with me, but not really pulling the trigger. And so, you know, and, like, you know, I never really, you know, it was always good to, you know, hear from them, but, like, you know, no one's pulling triggers. So, I mean, I just kept on working, you know, I didn't let that distract me. And, you know, I just kept working, you know. I had a couple teams, and I had, like, some UFL teams talk to me, too, after the end of 2011 season, because I was all arena and had a good year, and went through the 2012 season, had another good year, just didn't hear anything, you know, and I just, you know, I just took it like, hey, you know, maybe I need to, you know, put some weight on. Maybe I need to get bigger and stronger. You know, I talked to a couple of coaches, and, you know, with the Utah Blaze, and, you know, I think the big key was putting on some weight and showing that side of strength and be able to take, you know, to play at the next level. So, you know, this season came up, you know, and I had a heck of an off season. I put on good 20 pounds, and, you know, was having a good year again. Was starting off with a blast, and then one of the scouts from the Colts had contacted me earlier in the season, and they were looking at me. So we sent some film. My agent sent some film, and he sent some pictures and stuff, like what I look like, you know, body wise, and didn't hear nothing for about a month and a half or so. So, you know, I just kept playing well. Finally, you know, agent gives me a call that, hey, they want to fly you in for a workout. Wow. So, you know, definitely was exciting. So I was like, hey, you know, here's my opportunity. You know, got to make the best of it. You know, so in the middle of the week, middle of the season, I flew out, did the workout, you know, and I guess, you know, the workout went well, and they signed me from there.
That's amazing.
And then everything, you know, now I'm right here.
So, did your other teammates then in the Arena League, were they all happy for you? I imagine a lot of those guys have the same kind of dreams that you do of getting that call and getting that invite to go work out.
Oh, they were definitely happy for me, because you know that's what a lot of guys that's playing arena ball are still playing. You know, in hopes for a shot, you know, to make it to the next level. You know, make it, you know, and it was good, you know, for me to make it. So, you know, it gives guys hope, because, you know, I mean, we, you know, as, you know, guys playing arena football, you know, there is some good players there. You know, it's always good for guys to get that opportunity, to get that chance, you know, and you never know, there might be another person in my same shoes down the road, you know, that might have to take that arena football path, or, you know, and it might get some encouragement. So it definitely was good, you know, and guys were happy for me, you know, and guys that, you know, lobby for me to make it. So, you know, it's definitely a good support.
Yeah. You've when I first did my scouting report on you, Caesar, I got the notification that you'd been signed, and I see this guy at outside linebacker that's 6'8", and I'm like, I don't think I've seen that on the Colts in ever. So how do you think that height helps you, and then what ways do you think it makes things harder in football, especially as an outside linebacker?
Well, I think like outside linebacker, most people at my height, especially play a linebacker position, you gotta be pretty nimble, quick, fast, and be able to cover ground and stuff. So, you see a tall guy like me, and you're thinking, oh well, is he quick enough to to move laterally, nimble enough to especially with the height in football, getting under linemen and keeping up wide receivers or running backs and stuff, and just as a position, but. I just feel like there's also benefits because, with my height, be able to cover ground and use my length and, athleticism, to really make a difference. But, there's definitely those pros and cons, but, I always try to, work out those cons and make them pros.
So if you had the choice, and you had to choose between rushing the passer, dropping back in coverage, or taking on a running back behind the line of scrimmage, which of those three things do you feel most comfortable with, and which do you enjoy the most?
Well, I mean, there's nothing better than, getting after the quarterback. And, I, as a defensive guy, if you got the ball, I want to hit you. And that's how my whole
I knew you were
going
to say that.
It don't really matter who has the ball. If you got the ball, I'm trying to hunt you down.
I had a feeling that was what you were going to go with.
Well, I do definitely. Dropping in coverage is something I'm working on. I haven't dropped in coverage probably since college. And maybe a couple of zone pressures here and there. But other than that, it's been a while. But there's something to work on. And it's kind of fun because every now and then you might get your hand on a ball, you might get a tip ball or stuff like that. And I've had my fair share of the arena ball catches some interceptions and taking them in for a touchdown. So. It's definitely that opportunity, another little highlight, to, do, in the game.
What other things do you think for a guy like you're looking to make the roster any way you can, do anything they ask of you. Have you ever thought about any other spots on the field, red zone target at 6'7", special teams roles? What other kinds of skills do you bring to the table? Do you think that ways that you think you could contribute to the team beyond just the obvious?
Well, I'm a hard-working guy, and I love playing special teams. I know one thing I've been known for since college and arena is I'm always have a knack with blocking kicks.
I noticed
even
that,
in high school. I have a knack at just blocking kicks and, hustling down kickoffs and, I just love special teams because it's just another opportunity to be on the field. And I'm a guy that, I want to be on the field. I don't want to leave it. I want to be a part of everything. But I think the big thing for me is really making an impact on special teams. And I think I can bring a lot to the special teams because with my height, speed, athleticism, and strength, I mean, I can have really good matchups on special teams, especially when it comes to blocking field goals, blocking kicks, get down kickoffs, pretty much anything they want to put me at, I'm ready to go for.
With all of the veterans on the team, Caesar, have you found a mentor yet? I know a guy like Robert Mathis who started on special teams. Has anyone taken you under their wing?
I kind of, it's kind of funny. I kind of watch from the back and stuff. I listen. I'm kind of around everybody. But I'm kind of a guy like I, kind of watch and learn from guys. And also got to look at I'm not like 22, 23 years old. At 27. I'm pretty much as old as everybody else on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I kind of watch from the distance and just try to do what I can and learn from all the veteran guys that have been here and then try to do what I can, to make an impact. Like from the last couple of teams, like I've always been the captain and the leader on the team and stuff. So right now it's kind of like, let me sit back and watch and let's see how these guys want to show and kind of learn from them and, and to lead by example.
Caesar, you've obviously given Colts fans a lot to cheer for and root for already in this interview. But just as a final question, give the listeners out there one or two reasons why they should absolutely be pulling for you to make this roster, why they should be trying to cheer you on during the entire preseason and training camp time?
Well, you're gonna get a guy that's gonna be just gonna get after it and has a passion for football. Because I love it. You know, there's never a dull moment. You're gonna see a guy that's gonna be passionate, he's gonna be getting after it, and you're gonna see the emotion on me. Because I play like a crazy animal out there, especially when I get things going.
That sounds fantastic, Caesar. I encourage Colts fans to go out there, look him up on YouTube. There's some fantastic workout videos on there. This is a big man with some serious ill intent for the opposing offense and special teams, and we're going to pull for you all preseason, Caesar, and I hope we can talk to you soon during the regular season when you've got a spot on the roster. And all the best of luck, man, and I really hope you make it.
If you're at
thank you very much.
If you're at training camp, I don't think it'll be hard to find you.
Oh yeah, I do kind of stick out, but yeah, I really appreciate it, and you know, let's get this thing going. It's going to be fun and exciting. I just can't wait.
All right, brother. Well, best of luck to you, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Caesar.
All right, you got to take care.
And we're back with our next guest, Russell Baxter. Those of you who have been listening to sports radio are more than familiar with Mr. Baxter's work. He's a football guru. You can find an anthology of all of his work at ProFootballGuru.com. He writes for Bleacher Report. He's on Fox Sports Radio. You can find him pretty much anywhere and everywhere that they need an NFL historian, an NFL mind, and a great NFL stat man. Russell, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, gee, with an introduction like this, I can't wait to listen to this guy.
Now, Russell, I've been following you on Twitter for quite some time. By the way, everyone should give Russell a follow at Bax Football Guru. And we've exchanged pleasantries a few times. I'm glad that you're on tonight. I want to ask you about an article that just dropped today. You had breakout candidates for all 32 teams, and your pick for the Colts was Darius Hayward-Bay. And it seems like there's quite a divergence of opinion about Hayward-Bay. Everyone either picks him as like the biggest possible bust or the biggest possible breakout candidate. What did you like about Hayward-Bay and the fit with Indianapolis?
I think the thing I liked about Darius Hayward-Bay, and first off, I always kind of chuckle at you know, being a high bust because he was drafted so high. But, you know, last I checked, players don't pick where they're drafted.
Sure.
And you know, if you remember earlier in this offseason, the Oakland Raiders had quite a house cleaning. You know, 3 former top 10 picks, Michael Huff, Rolando McClain, and Darius Hayward-Bay, all let go by the organization. And, you know, Michael Huff wound up in Baltimore. Rolando McClain wound up in Baltimore, but then turned around and retired. And, you know, that's a whole separate story in itself. And, of course, Hayward-Bay winds up with the Indianapolis Colts. And listen, the potential is there for some great things. The speed is you know, a big factor. I think the thing is, if you remember early in his career, what a disappointment he was with the drops, and he just kind of fought through it. You know, last year, you remember the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers in September where he took a monster hit, and he didn't put up the numbers that he put up the previous year, but he's kind of hung in there for the last 2 years after, for lack of a better word, being ridiculed for being such a high pick in 2009. And I think that the fact that he's kind of stuck with it. I believe the Colts have only signed him to a 1-year contract. You know, so far Ryan Grigson has certainly pushed the right buttons in terms of the offense. Their draft last year was tremendous in terms of rebuilding the offense. And I just think this is maybe right place, right time for a team that, you know, obviously had one of the great turnarounds in NFL history last year.
Yeah, obviously having luck helps a lot, because the situation at quarterback was quite turbulent in Oakland. Do you also think it helps that he has a bunch of other weapons around him, like Reggie Wayne and T.Y. Hilton? Do you think that opens the field for him this year?
Oh, I don't think it's any question about it. I think there's less pressure on him, and ideally that's how every player wants to play with. You know, I think sometimes we get, you know, I know we get this with the quarterbacks because of the quarterback-driven league. You know, I guess the offensive linemen don't drive, and I guess the wide receivers and the running backs don't drive, and the tight end doesn't drive. You know, everything is kind of built around the quarterback. You know, more times than not, we talk about how many championships the quarterbacks have won. Well, the rest of the team kind of counts too. It's funny. I go back and look at and listen, I could do this so many different ways with numbers. The last 5 teams that win the Super Bowl have all had contribution scoring-wise in the game, something other than the offense. We have seen, 3 interception returns, a safety, and a kickoff return by the last 5 Super Bowl champions. And, considering how close these games are in the Super Bowl, those points were obviously needed.
I wanted to ask you, so then what would you consider a successful year for Hayward-Bay? Give me a slash line, receptions, yards, touchdowns, of what you feel like if he did X, Colts fans would feel good about it. I mean, does he just merely have to sort of match what Donnie Avery did last year? Or what do you have in mind for him?
I'd like to see him, I don't even know so much number of catches. I would certainly like to see him average somewhere between 16 and 18 yards per catch.
Wow.
I don't think that's extraordinary. Those are extraordinary numbers, but for his talent, I think that's a reasonable, expectation. Maybe 7 touchdown receptions and anywhere maybe between 55 and 65 catches.
Wow, that would be a fantastic season. I think Colts fans would be pretty happy with that.
Right, and listen, with it's still, you've got other people there. You get obviously at the tight ends with Dwayne Allen and Kobe Fleener, obviously Reggie Wayne, who never seems to slow down. So if you compliment it, I think people forget that the guy who led the Colts last year was in touchdowns last year was T.Y. Hilton. Reggie Wayne had an outstanding year, and Vic Ballard led the team in rushing. But as far as total touchdowns, it was Hilton. One of my favorite stats from the entire season last year was that rookie class of the Colts. And I'm talking about, when I talk about Andrew Luck here, I'm talking about not his touchdown passes, I'm talking about his touchdown runs. He had 5 touchdown runs last year. So you take the 6 members of their draft class, and that's excluding the quarterback taken as Mr. Irrelevant, but Luck, Fleener, Allen, Brazil, Ballard, and Hilton, 22 of the team's 40 touchdowns scored by those 6 players last year.
Huh.
That's really amazing. Now, let me ask you this. When you look at Andrew Luck, obviously the comparisons are going to flow, pretty heavily between Russell Wilson, RG3, and Luck, those being the 3 big guys from last year. And Luck's sort of greatness last year came at a little bit different shape, a little bit different form than RG3's and Wilson's, who were, much statistically speaking, much easier to look at and say, wow, those were amazing rookie seasons. Luck's season was awkward statistically in every area except, the win column, which was the unexpected 11 wins. What do you see from him? Where do you see him ranking in that sort of trifecta of great young quarterbacks by the end of this year? Is he going to be, the best of the 3? Will he be the worst of the 3, which may not be very bad? How do you see Luck's development in year 2 coming along?
I like how you worded that too. I mean, the best of 3, the worst of the 3, and since there's 32 quarterbacks in the National Football League, I wouldn't mind being 3rd.
Exactly.
I have no problem with that whatsoever. So, the thing that, one of Andrew Luck's greatest strengths, it's kind of hard to say it was also a weakness, but I think people forget that he threw 23 touchdown passes last year, and we also know he set the rookie record for passing yards in the season. But his 23 touchdown passes were kind of offset with 23 turnovers. I think people kind of forget that. The one thing about Robert Griffin III and Russell Wilson, no relation, by the way, is they did not turn over the football a lot. Right. But the thing was, the beauty of Andrew Luck is that sense of being unflappable. And I can remember going back, not that it was terribly long, but when he was at Stanford in that, game against USC where he threw a pick 6.
Yes.
And it was like, so what? I'll just take the team right down the field, go and score. And that was the thing about Andrew Luck last year. So much was made about the comebacks. But sometimes the comebacks were necessarily because it was Luck and company that dug themselves the hole in the first place. with the mistakes. But listen, Peyton Manning turned over the ball a lot when he was a rookie. It's part of it. It's learning through it and learning how you deal with it. And I expect him to make dramatic improvement in that regard this year. He also took his share of hits, behind the offensive line. The Colts made some strides there in terms of free agency. So it's a learning experience. We get so caught up sometimes in the turnaround and, a 9-game turnaround, which, by the way, for the Colts is nothing. Okay?
Right.
I mean,
I lived through 1999, so I saw that firsthand.
Here's what I'll tell you. Here's what people forget. Let's go back to 1974 when they were, a 1-win team?
Yeah.
1-13? And then under Ted Barchabroda went 10-4 and won the division. 9-game turnaround, I believe it was, or an 8-game turnaround. The Colts have done this like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it's
gone
a bunch
from like
of
a one
franchise.
What was it? 91 they were 1-15. 92 they were 9-7.
Yep.
So you go back and look. I don't know what it is about the Colts. I guess they like this big turnaround type of thing. But the 98, like you said, 98 and 99, 3-13, 13-3. The 10-game turnaround, which ties, 2008 Dolphins for the biggest in NFL history. But again, learning experience. Now, does Andrew Luck turned over the ball 20 times this year, and they take a little bit of a step backwards? To me, the Colts' fortunes this year are less about the offense and more about the defense.
Yes.
As we saw, Ryan Grigson was able to rebuild the Colts offense through the draft. He's now attempting to rebuild the defense through free agency, and I'm wondering if that is going to ultimately work.
It's going to be very interesting because some of the players they signed were not top-tier free agents. One of the few big names they did add was Ahmad Bradshaw. What do you think about Indianapolis's running game this year? Pretty mediocre, to be kind, last year with Vic Ballard. Where do you see it going this year?
Well, a lot of it has to do with reps. And, you do have a little versatility there now with Bradshaw, who's a 1,000-yard rusher last season. And for me, the running game is, when I say reps, running game to me is as much about carries as it is yards. I mean, I think it's great that, you can have a back that has 9 carries and gains 125 yards and 3 touchdowns. But sometimes I think I prefer a back that gets 25 carries for $113 and 2 scores, and that's 16 fewer plays that the other team has the football, and that's where the balance aspect comes in, and that's why you can see, in this league where you can throw for over 5,000 yards and over 40 touchdown passes, and not even make it to the NFC title game or the playoffs in back-to-back years. I just described Drew Brees, by the way.
Yeah.
Those numbers are phenomenal. You're probably going to win a lot. So that, winning would be your fantasy football league. I don't know if it necessarily works in the National Football League.
So Russell, a last question before I ask you to plug all the things you have going on, which are legion. Where do you see Indianapolis finishing this year? Are they better or are they worse than last year? And is their record better or worse? Because those are really 2 different questions.
I think a lot of people have assumed that the Colts will give the Texans a run for their money, and I think that's certainly possible. But I think the team you kind of got to keep an eye on also in the AFC South is the Tennessee Titans. I think there's a lot of work to do in Jacksonville, so all due respect to them. So I think it is going to be your obligatory. The Colts could be a better football team, but not necessarily with 11-5 record. I kind of feel that Houston is still the elite team. Elite is such an overused word, but the premier team in the division. And I think the Colts, it's not necessarily a step backwards, but they'll be a more, experienced team, obviously. It's what they did last year in getting where they got to and even reaching the playoffs was amazing. I mean, you could literally write a book or 2 about the entire 2012 Indianapolis Colts, from the Chuck Pagano situation throughout and throughout. I mean, it was astounding if you really think. I mean, this was a team that won 11 games and yet was outscored by 30 points during the regular season. So they made the most. They had a great home record last year, and yet you think about that, they were 7-1 at home last year, guys. And who did they lose to? The Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
Okay, the only team that beat them at home last year, early in the season. So I think they'll be a better football team. And you know what's good, an aspect that is going to be interesting is watching Chuck Pagano coach the entire year.
Yes.
This year, and you know, let's see what happens in terms of. I think there'll be a better defensive team. Again, I'm not convinced that free agency is always the way to go when you rebuild the team through it. I think it's great for plugging holes. So I'll say the Colts are a 9-7 or 10-6 team this year. I don't know if they get back to the playoffs. I think they'll be better. I think you'll see a dramatic statistical improvement in Andrew Luck. I don't think there's any question about that. But whether it manufactures itself into another playoff berth, hey, and we saw the Bears finish 10-6 last year and couldn't make the playoffs.
Kobe Fleener and Dwayne Allen both had pretty good, solid years last year. Do you think Dwayne Allen or Kobe Fleener and Dwayne Allen, do you think either one of those guys can break out? And where do you see them ranked among tight end duos in the NFL?
Ooh, that's a great question. And Fleener, correct me if I'm wrong, was a little banged up last year too.
Yes, he was.
I didn't know that much about Dwayne Allen, but it was hard not to be impressed when you saw him play last year. And that's not a knock on Fleener. It's more of a credit to Allen. Listen, I remember Brett Favre with those two tight ends. Remember when he had Keith Jackson and Mark Shimura at the same time? That can be a really tough combination to cover. I mean, you know, think about New England with Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. Okay, I mean, obviously that story's taken on a whole different life now and so on. But you know, tight ends are, no matter, even if we know they're getting the football, they still remain very, very tough to cover. And in this day and age where it's, you know, frankly, it's tough to cover everybody because of the rules and everything that favors the passing game. If that tandem stays healthy, and with the way Andrew Luck sees the field, I mean, they could put up some big numbers. I think Dwayne Allen could have a very significant year this year. And you know, it makes it sound like I have Andrew Luck throwing for 55 touchdown passes. You know, that's not necessarily the case. Again, remember T.Y. Hilton was a big factor for them last year. Of course, Donnie Avery was a factor for them last year, and he's not there anymore. He's in Kansas City. So you're looking for somebody to take up a little bit of the slack. I think Allen's catches will certainly go up. But more important than anything, I think you're going to see a big year out of Andrew Luck. I think the turnovers will go down significantly. I think the yards could go down, but I think they'll also be a little more balanced this year.
Sure. Well, hey Russell, before we leave you, give us a plug for anything you got going on. I know you're writing for Bleacher Report. Plug all your gigs and tell the people one more time how to find you on Twitter, where you're a great follow.
Oh, thank you very much. Bax Football Guru on Twitter. ProFootballGuru.com is the website. And if you go on ProFootballGuru.com, you can find everything I write. I think my diary's on there somewhere, as a matter of fact.
It's great.
So,
that's a really convenient site to keep track of you, because you're everywhere, and it's just a great way to keep track of everything you're doing.
One-stop shopping for Bleacher Report, Yahoo, Sports, Cold Hard Football Facts, Gridiron Grit, which is part of the Yardbarker Network I'm doing work for now, Pro Player Insiders. Again, if I write it, it's eventually going to wind up there. We're doing a fun series on the 5 players to keep an eye on for all 32 teams. We're halfway done on Yahoo. And for people who have Facebook, there's a Pro Football Guru Facebook page. If you like it, we'll like you.
All right. Thank you very much, Russell. It's great having you on tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Russell.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Good luck to the Colts this year.
All right.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
Well, Tyler, another great show. What are you looking for from the first week of training camp as we wrap up tonight?
Obviously, I'm pulling for Teddy and Caesar for being on our show. I'm looking for Justice Cunningham. I'm looking for Daxton Swanson, and I'm looking for Daniel Adongo, the rugby player.
All right. Well, it's been another great episode of Cold Central Radio. We'll catch you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, this is Nate Dunleavy for Tyler Brook. Go Horse.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.